Hey guys, it's Protendo, and Steve from Minecraft getting into Smash Ultimate was my absolute favorite gaming announcement of the year. Ever since Smash Ultimate was announced back in 2018, this was the first time that I had gotten a character that I genuinely really wanted in the game. Granted, that doesn't mean that there weren't other characters I was happy to see in. K. Rool and Isabelle were two fighters I was happy to see join the battle, but even they weren't anywhere near the top of my wishlist. Getting Steve from Minecraft was a real adrenaline rush, and really opened my eyes in terms of reassessing other characters I desperately wanted in the game, and what their chances may be. And considering the fact that Steve was only my second most wanted character, it's only natural that I'd have to make a video about the first, said character of course being Frisk from Undertale. Across Smash Ultimate's lifetime, my expectations of an Undertale character joining the roster have been pretty up and down. I've even made a couple videos on the subject before, because it's just that important to me. And in these sorts of videos, I've always gotten a very similar question, so I'll address it here. Why wasn't I just satisfied with the Sans Me costume? Shouldn't that have been enough? Well, the answer is honestly pretty simple. I love Undertale. A lot. I love its characters, its environment, its story, and especially its soundtrack. While Sans and Megalovania might have been a taste of the representation I was hoping for, simply getting a costume and a single music track, one that's not even the best track in the game mind you, definitely left me dissatisfied when I knew the source material can provide so much more. And no, I don't think it's selfish to still want a character from your favorite game to get into Smash, since that's literally what everybody wants. But with that out of the way, let's dive into Frisk's actual chances of getting that special letter and joining the battle. First things first, there's something more general that we have to address before we get to Frisk specifically, that being indie characters. Is there even a chance that an indie character could make it into Smash Ultimate? Well, the idea shouldn't be shot down immediately. During the Switch era, Nintendo has been pushing indie titles to a much greater extent. They have their own directs, and often frequent the eShop's bestseller lists. We've also seen Nintendo let indie developers handle their major IP characters, like in Cadence of Hyrule, which to my knowledge was a first for the company. It's evident that they value indie games now more than they ever have before. But why should an indie character get a spot on the roster, instead of a continuous stream of Mii Fighter costumes? Aren't those enough for the indie scene? Well, I think Reggie put it best at the Game Awards last year.
In this category, Fresh Indie Game, you can see how games are continuing to evolve as entertainment. I think this is the most important award of the night, because I believe indie developers are the most important creators in this industry. Why? Because every nominee this year, and every year at one time, was an indie developer. In the same sense that everyone was once a kid sketching a superhero in the middle of class, or lying in bed at night thinking of worlds and challenges that no one had ever dreamed of before.
Indie games are an integral part of the gaming community. They can be just as innovative, just as inspiring, and have just as much heart put into them as AAA titles. This is the ultimate Smash Bros. Game, a self-proclaimed celebration of all of gaming, something that Sakurai admitted most likely won't be possible in the future. If you're truly celebrating gaming in general like they claim to be doing, you have to include an indie character amongst the roster, truly cementing that indies are just as valuable as AAA games. But if Nintendo did add an indie character to Smash, why would it be Frisk, and not any of the thousands of indie characters that exist out there? Well, in all honesty, I think Frisk is one of only 2 indie characters that has any semblance of a chance to make it into Smash Ultimate, and I'll explain why. To start us off, the first thing to acknowledge is Undertale's insane popularity. Undertale has a ginormous fanbase and is known to millions of people who aren't even a part of that fanbase. Its locations, characters, and especially music are well known worldwide and are even decently popular in Japan. Back in 2019, Nintendo revealed that Undertale was one of the top 10 best-selling indie games on the Switch, featured alongside titles like Hollow Knight, Stardew Valley, and Celeste. This is truly incredible when you see how vast the Switch's collection of indie titles is. Undertale's popularity, both in its fanbase and outside of it, make it perfect for recognizability, something that many indies don't feature to the same extent. And by the way, Undertale's popularity isn't just something that fans pay attention to, no. Nintendo acknowledged it directly. On that fateful day, in September 2019, Nintendo revealed the first ever indie character Mii costume. And what character was it? Well, none other than Undertale's famous funny skeleton himself. Not only was Sans the first of this series of special Mii costumes that we now see often, but even over a year later, he still stands out. Sans is the only Mii costume to have received a remix alongside him. This form of special treatment hasn't been seen with any other DLC Mii Fighter costume, and in my eyes, this really exemplifies Nintendo's appreciation of Undertale and recognizing the importance of the game. Also, I obviously have to acknowledge the insane reaction that Sans received. I am not exaggerating when I say that this Mii costume got a bigger reaction than the majority of Smash Ultimate's roster. I mean, take a look for yourselves. While we don't have access to sales data for Mii costumes, based on all the internet buzz and what I've seen while playing Ultimate myself, I think it's safe to assume that Sans is the game's best-selling Mii costume. Surely, Nintendo would have to recognize the sales potential a series like this holds. When you have a costume that gets a larger reaction than the majority of your DLC fighters, it's definitely going to make a bit of a buzz in the office, I would presume. And speaking of the Sans Mii costume, has anyone noticed that Undertale still hasn't received spirits? When Cuphead was added into Smash Ultimate after Byleth's reveal, his series was given spirits immediately. Undertale has now had 2 perfect opportunities to get spirits in Ultimate. The first one obviously being alongside Sans, and the second one being on Undertale's 5th anniversary during September of this year. That would have been the perfect time to add a new spirit event to celebrate the game's legacy, yet nothing came of it. And here we are, over a year after Sans' release, and still no peep about spirits whatsoever. Something to take note of is that Ultimate has been seen holding off on spirits in order to release them alongside a new character before, the most notable example being with Byleth's 3 Houses spirits. And with Undertale's characters being its strongest and most well-recognized element, besides maybe music, I can't possibly imagine why they would wait for over a year to add them into the game. I just can't wrap my head around it. Out of everything I've said and will say in this video, this is probably the piece of evidence that stands out the most. But let's move on from Undertale's characters to Undertale's creator, the legend himself, Toby Fox. Toby Fox has become one of the most well-known figures in gaming since Undertale's release, and it's very easy to see why. He has one of the most captivating indie success stories in modern history. Most of you already know about it, so I'm not going to dwell on the matter for too long, but let's just say that single-handedly going from Earthbound ROM hacks to getting a song from said ROM hack in the largest crossover in history is no small feat. That type of evolution is something that, in my eyes, is one that perfectly represents the indie scene. But putting that aside, let's look at Toby's relationship with Nintendo and Sakurai, because both seem to be rather strong. I'm sure everyone remembers this, but I feel the need to bring it up anyways. Toby Fox literally went to Sakurai's house and played Smash Ultimate with him, something that Toby wasn't even aware Sakurai was going to share. Later on, Sakurai even drove him to where he was staying as they played Smash music in the car. I'm aware that not everything Sakurai does is hinting towards some form of Smash announcement. Thinking that way can be extremely toxic. The man has a life and is allowed to have friends without people thinking everything's about his job. However, I still wanted to point this out because it truly cements how far both Toby Fox and Undertale have come, where the guy can just visit Sakurai's house and get a game of Ultimate going. This is something truly exceptional for any developer, but for a young American indie dev, it speaks even greater volumes. But while Sakurai obviously has some form of control over DLC characters, he's admitted to being able to decline characters that Nintendo suggested, we all know that the Big N are the ones who are really calling the shots. As Sakurai said on numerous occasions, Nintendo chose all the DLC fighters. So while having a good relationship with Sakurai himself might be helpful, having a good relationship with Nintendo is just as, if not more, essential. And luckily for us, Toby Fox has both. Even ignoring the hand that Nintendo would obviously have to play in okaying Sans into Smash, there are some things outside of that that allude to a strong relationship between Toby and the company. Obviously, Undertale and Deltarune are both on the Switch, but it's also important to acknowledge that both these games were prominently announced during Nintendo Directs. Deltarune's announcement specifically being the first console announcement the title received. Nintendo has also been shown to acknowledge the selling potential that comes with Toby Fox's name alone. When marketing Game Freak's Little Town Hero during a September Direct, one of the main elements that was brought attention to was the soundtrack that Toby had composed almost single-handedly. And these ties with Game Freak would clearly carry him further, as Toby ended up creating music for Pokemon Sword and Shield, the Switch's 5th best-selling game. While I'm aware that Game Freak isn't Nintendo, being an indie dev and working on one of the Switch's best sellers in any capacity is still a major accomplishment, and something that's bound to get you attention. Also, something that should be made clear is just how easy working with Toby would be. While most third-party Smash characters have to go through the hassle of dealing with various IP owners and a whole bunch of different people in order to make sure that they're completely okay with the fighter's portrayal, with an Undertale character, you really just have to go to Toby. Maybe Temmie too, I'm not exactly sure. And while I'm not Sakurai, I imagine that would make legal matters so much easier to deal with. Most of the DLC characters have also had a newly released game to promote, and while it's still a few years away, an Undertale character would be great for promoting Deltarune. Everyone wins in this scenario, both Nintendo and Toby Fox. I feel like all of these elements combining really illustrate why Nintendo would be interested in a new Undertale character to begin with. An insanely popular, incredibly recognizable franchise created by a man with pretty good ties to the company, as well as one of their best-selling games in the current generation. Said man also holds almost all the rights to everything in his game, making legal affairs a breeze and simplifying an often monotonous process. A character from this game would also cement just how much they care about indie games, something that they've gone out of their way to show this generation. When it's all laid out like that, it almost seems too perfect. But now that we've gone over why both Sakurai and Nintendo might want an Undertale character, let's talk about Frisk specifically. Why them instead of Sans, or even another monster like Papyrus or Undyne? Well, ignoring the obvious main character bias Smash has, Frisk is simply the character that can represent Undertale in the best way possible. Every DLC fighter so far has had some sort of gimmick, so who's to say Frisk couldn't have some sort of pacifist or genocide feature alongside them? One where your attacks change depending on the mode you're in. That system is truly at the heart of Undertale, and is one that just couldn't have been captured by Sans or anyone other than Frisk. During Undertale, Frisk also uses various weapons, actions, and items, like frying pans, jetpacks, and phones to call for help, so there's plenty of moveset potential there, more than any other Undertale character could bring. It's safe to say that Frisk could absolutely bring something new to Smash that's never been seen before, and that seems to be Sakurai's goal with the DLC. And speaking of the DLC, I can't believe I've gone this long without talking about the possibility of Undertale music in Smash. I swear, this is like 99.9% of why I want Frisk in the game to begin with. Undertale has one of the most highly praised and recognizable soundtracks in modern gaming. Even those who hate Undertale can't bring themselves to diss the music because they know they'd be objectively wrong in doing so. It is a travesty that Megalovania is the only song in Smash, while Death by Glamour, Hopes and Dreams, Asgore, and others sit on the sidelines. Whereas Sakurai said remixing songs in Minecraft was difficult because of the laid-back nature of the tracks, Undertale is almost completely opposite to it in this regard. The game has dozens of fast-paced, energetic tracks, many of which are absolutely perfect to remix, and some that don't have to be remixed at all. And stages, wow are there options for stages. Each one of Undertale's locations is highly iconic, but they wouldn't even have to pick a single one. A transitional stage throughout the entire underground would capture Undertale's vibe to a T. I think with all of this said, it's abundantly clear that Undertale is ripe with potential for a challenger pack. Frisk would be an insanely original character and could bring incredible music and an awesome stage alongside them. The recognizability aspect of Undertale's music and locations is also something that I imagine would catch Nintendo's eye. There is so much potential. So, at the end of the day, what do I think Frisk's chances of getting into Smash Ultimate are? After compiling all that evidence, you'd think I'd feel certain about their inclusion, but honestly, I just can't be. Smash has shown us time and time again that we're constantly going to be surprised no matter how hard we try to fight against it. Frisk's evidence is all pretty situational, especially because of how bizarre Nintendo is. Like, they could just announce Undertale Spirits tomorrow, completely randomly, and boom, this video is entirely irrelevant. So, while I think Frisk has a pretty decent shot of making it into Smash Ultimate's roster, especially among indie characters, I don't know if I'm confident enough about their inclusion to the point where I'd replace any of my official predictions with them. Instead, I'll just keep hoping and dreaming, imagining the day that my favorite game gets a character in Smash. And if that day ever does come, boy will I be happy. But anyways guys, that's about it for this video. What do you think? Does Frisk have a high chance of making it into Smash Ultimate, or was this whole video a bunch of nonsense? Let me know in the comments below. Protendo, out.